I'm here with Jerome today. Hey, Jerome, good to have you. Good to have you on board. Where are you based today?
Hey, Franz. I'm in France, very close to Luxembourg, where our offices are.
Welcome everyone again to this new episode of a new series that we've started here at Sellics. So essentially, every week on Thursday, we do an interview with one of the experts from our network, one of the Amazon experts from our network, with who we discuss the impact of the Corona impact. So how the entire Corona crisis impacts Amazon businesses. And the goal is essentially to give you guys tips and strategies how you can get through this time as well as possible. Today, the focus is on supply chain. So last week, we had Chris from Molsey, and so we were discussing very broadly how Corona is affecting the different parts of the business. Today, we want to focus a bit more on the supply chain side of things. We won't be talking only about this, but essentially we want to recap what happened so far, what happened in China, what happened with Amazon on the inbound side, on the outbound side, right? So what's been going on, what's the current state of affairs when it comes to the supply chain on Amazon. We look into how the different marketplaces have been affected by those changes on the supply side, and what categories have been affected to what degree. And then we also want to make sure to leave you a ton of tactics and tips how you can get through this crisis. That's the focus for today. Our guest today is Jerome, right? Jerome, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself very briefly?
Yes, thank you very much. Jerome, I'm from the e-commerce agency. We basically help brands grow on Amazon faster and globally. And we've got two areas. We do consulting, where we can help train, coach, do workshops, and another part where we do account management. And we've been very busy with this part, helping a lot of our customers and brands go through this period. Unfortunately, a big part of them had to close down or stop their work because they couldn't sell on Amazon. Some had to find emergency plans. So yeah, we've been working very hard with them, and I think it's very important everybody try to help each other, despite not being always paid on time on everything, just to get through this period. So one first thing is I do feel for everyone who's going through this period. It's a very tough. Some are doing great business and it's a great opportunity, but a big part are really suffering, and we feel for that. And so good luck to everyone. And here we are to give you some tips and see how we can help further to go through this period.
That's great. I mean, I think it's definitely the same sentiment I have. Some people really going through the roof, but also a lot that are affected in a fairly negative way, right? So specifically the small ones, those are the ones where I feel the most, right? Yeah, let's hope that this all passes as quickly as possible. So the customers that you work with, are those sellers or are those vendors?
Yeah, we've got a good share of both sellers and vendors, because brands can be both. We only work with brands or distributors which have got all brand rights, so they can be both. And situation is tough in both cases, apart if you're lucky enough to be in the right category, which is authorized by Amazon those days. If not, then okay, it can be more difficult.
Okay, so you have across you work with customers across all different categories and industries, so you have a pretty broad insight essentially, right? So that's
yeah, we've got from consumer goods to industrial goods to like consumer electronics, and even some very specific products, and from all over the world, some from different countries, and also working in different countries on Amazon. So it's a very broad view.
But let's jump right into this. So, Jerome, let me go ahead and share my screen for a second, because I wanted to essentially summarize. We've built a screen that summarizes all the development that happened so far on the supply side. So let me just go in here. So here we are. You should all be seeing my screen, right? So when we talk about the Corona crisis, essentially our point of view at Sellics is that it's been going in three different phases, right? So the first phase was essentially when the Chinese supply side was affected. So on January 23, Wuhan, the region in China, was the lockdown started, right? That was right under the Chinese New Year period. So Chinese New Year this year ended on February 8, right? And so essentially from January 23 up until the beginning of March, essentially, when things started to open up again in China. Essentially, China has been, or specifically Wuhan, has been under lockdown for about 6 to 8 weeks, pretty much. So that was the first phase, right? So the Chinese factories essentially being affected by this. The second phase then of this was that in the Western world, there was a nationwide lockdown in the industry being very, very early, France as well, but now also UK, Germany, and obviously also the US is largely in lockdown, right? So there's phase 2 where essentially the nations have been in lockdown. And then phase 3 has been, and this is very specific to Amazon, is when essentially the delivery on Amazon has been affected, right? So, and Amazon delivery have been affected in 2 ways. So first of all, the inbound shippings. So those are the shippings from the warehouses to the Amazon warehouses, right? So to the FBA warehouses, where on March 17, essentially it was announced that the inbound shipments will be restricted, and Amazon is only going to accept inbound shipments for non-essential essential categories. So a lot of categories could not, a lot of sellers in the non-essential categories could not send any new items to the Amazon warehouses, right? That was March 17, that's about 2 weeks ago. And then a couple of days later, so starting from the 21st of March, essentially also the outbound shipping was affected. So the outbound shipping is essentially from the Amazon fulfillment center to the end consumer, where essentially Amazon in France and Italy has had full restrictions, and in the US and EU, many categories or products in many categories have been postponed to, the deliveries have been pushed out to the 21st of April or the 19th of April, depends on the country a little bit. So essentially the delivery times went from 1 or 2 days up to 4 or 5 weeks, essentially, right? There was 21st, there was last week, right? And then, yeah, just a couple of days ago, Amazon essentially announced that this inbound restriction or this inbound shipment restrictions, that those would be extended for a certain for a certain period, but that it's overall it's loosening up a little bit, so that it will be easier for also for the non-essential categories to send in products, right? So this is essentially, I think, a high-level summary of what's been happening so far, right? So those 3 phases. When you think about those 3 phases, right? So let's talk about the first phase. So China being under lockdown, how much has this, how much problems has this caused for the Amazon sellers, for the Amazon businesses so far? Has this been a big issue because it fell right with Chinese New Year, right? So I mean, people were prepared to a certain degree, but how much has this first phase affected the Amazon businesses?
So actually, your graph is really great, because we've been so much into day-to-day surviving and firefighting that having this whole time frame is really good, because it's, you remember what happened in very early when we saw that the factories were starting to be touched. We sent that, yeah, I know that it's on 24th of February. We sent an email to all of our customers and contacts saying, okay, we're worried because we feel that the supply will reduce, and a lot of our customers obviously are selling on Amazon and they're producing in China, because most of the things are produced in China. And I was very worried because my background, I was working for a Chinese company for a long time as head of Europe. So I know all the time and, the impact of having a factory which is not working. And I was very worried for the companies here, saying, okay, wow, you will have no products to sell and you will be out of stock. And we know, as selling on Amazon, one of the worst case scenarios, you're out of stock because you lose all the work you've been doing. In terms of ranking and so on. So we started to discuss that, and people were starting to have a plan. And we were so focused on that we didn't sort of think, okay, it will come to us. And now things are going the other way around, is the factories in China are starting again to be able to ship. But it's us now who can't either receive the goods or are not able to ship them. So it's gone from a supply issue to now a demand issue.
I think that this lockdown that you had in Chinese factories caused a lot less interruptions to the availability of products than probably assumed initially, right?
Well, yes, and there was so many other issues coming, but we have still customers where they say, okay, the factories came back to work, they had some stock, they were able to ship it out as soon as possible, but we don't know in April or like in May if we will not, because as you know, it could take
Sure.
1 to 3 weeks to produce and 3 weeks to get on the boat and to get to your place. So you have 6 to 8 weeks to wait when you're starting the production, and sometimes they couldn't start very quickly. So the risk is still there. The thing is that some categories being not able to sell in FBA, at least, this out of stock issue is not really an issue anymore, because they just can't sell and they're not able to do FBM or
Right.
MFN or to deliver directly. So for them, or drop shipment if you're a vendor, but for them, then the problem is not so much, really important. So we're very in a very complicated universe, because depending on the category where you're sourcing, you could be in a very good position or a very tight one.
So phase 2, like Amazon suddenly not accepting inbound shipment for non-essential categories, right? What are the consequences of this? What did you see with your customers and the people that you talked to?
As soon as we saw that, because it went very quickly. As soon as we saw that, we said, okay, we asked to all our customers, and we did with them, to make a tentative order to see if it was working. And like for the unlucky ones on the seller accounts, okay, it was deactivated, so you couldn't send anything anymore. On the other ones, it's working. On the vendor side, it's more, are you receiving an order or are you not receiving an order? So we're just, fingers crossed. And basically the first thing was to say, okay, are we able to ship goods or to receive orders or not? That's the first thing. Then if not, how much stock do we have and how long will it last? And more or less, and then make a B plan. And that's where we come in play and say, okay, what are your different options when you're a seller or when you're a vendor and your category is not able to be shipped or is not authorized by Amazon? The products which were blocked are product which was FBA or fulfilled by Amazon, also through the vendor side.
Right.
So if you were doing already FBM, you could go on. That was never a problem. So the problem was for people which were doing FBA, and the best way to be successful on Amazon is to be FBA,
right, of course,
or FBM, FBM Prime, but that's more complex. So obviously, most of our customers, we've pushed them and encouraged them and say, okay, we should be FBA. So now they're in the situation of being FBA. So how do you move to FBM? So you've got two things where you can do here. One is you've got your SKU and you change it to FBM. You change the fulfillment method. The only problem is that to do that, you need to have all the stock outside of the Amazon warehouse. So if you have any returns, like if you are doing pan-EU fulfillment in Europe, and you've got some stock in France or in somewhere in Italy and so on, you need to get them all back from Amazon. And today, Amazon will not take care of returns, so for sure. So the only way, and that's the first tip of the day, is the only way to go around that is to create another SKU. Under the same ASIN, you create another SKU, which will be FBM. And on this SKU, you will be able to receive orders and to ship orders. So there are still occasions where Amazon is still getting orders on the FBA side and making reservations. So in this case, you need to open a case and say, guys, please solve this, because we want to sell things and in the FBM. So that's, for sellers, is really you create another SKU, and you, with this new SKU under the same ASIN.
Same ASIN. That's very important, right? It's not creating a new ASIN. It's the same ASIN. You just create a new SKU, right?
Exactly. And if you're a vendor on the same in the same way, you should enable drop shipment. So as far as we know, drop shipment is enabled even for unauthorized sellers. Basically, it's same as FBM. It's you store your products. The products are still sold by Amazon, but Amazon will pick the goods up in your warehouse and deliver to the end consumer. And normally with drop shipment, you should be able to sell. The fact it's less easy than on the seller side, because you need to ask for your vendor manager to make sure it's activated. So you can create your drop shipment listing on Vendor Central. That's easy, but you need to make sure with your vendor manager that it's activated.
So is this something that's, I guess that's something that a lot of people are wondering, right? So people doing FBA, how quickly can I go from FBA to FBM?
If you manage to have the teams can fulfill it, you will manage to, because the demand is still there. So you will be able to sell. Successful will really depend on your teams being able to take that much amount of work on top, and having the people not quarantine. That's basically, and it's very simple. And on the seller side, it's very simple. It's a matter of minutes to create this queue. It's like in 5 minutes you have this queue created, and you're ready to ship. Now, being ready for your teams to have the process in place, you need to make tests, make sure you can respond, because you don't want Amazon to deactivate your account because your response time is not good enough, or because your delivery time is not good enough. So you have an amount of risk, and making sure you've got things in place. What you need to be careful is that the system of Amazon to block accounts or to suspend SKUs is automated. So it's not like the system doesn't say, oh, I know it's a coronavirus, I'm sorry. So you will get sort of this warning, be careful, the number of unshipped items is too high, or things like that. And that will be automated. So you could have your ASIN, suspended, or even your account suspended. So the risk can be a bit high. So you really need to make sure you can handle it.
And then we've had a couple of questions so people that they're asking essentially, is this the right time to launch a business on Amazon? Is this what's the advice for those people who are thinking to start a business, right? So a bunch of questions going in this direction. What would be your suggestion at this point?
Well, I've had this week someone I know who said, okay, we're producing FFP2 masks. We've got authorization. We should do you think we should open a Amazon business? I said, yeah, you should for masks. That's for sure, because it would be also very helpful. But joke apart, I think if you have products which are authorized, you should do it. Don't expect it might take a bit more time, because the Amazon teams are focused on other things. It might be wee bit more complicated than usually, but you should do it. If you're non-authorized category, maybe you should work, except if you've got really nice FBM delivery capability. If you have a product which is really in demand in this period, you can use it. And we have another big brand actually who came to us and wanted to use the Amazon fulfillment facility, selling on eBay. So, for example, you could look at selling on eBay and use Amazon's logistics, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a tough question, right? It really depends on how fast business is going to pick up, right? I think, look, if you're in a category that is experiencing difficulties right now, right? So I think probably my answer to this would be, well, it depends, right? If you have some cash reserves and it doesn't matter too much if you see the return in 4 weeks or in 12 weeks, right? Then, go ahead, right? It might also be, I think, the flip side of this is it's probably a lot less competitive on marketplace, and we see this as well when you look at the cost of advertising. The CPCs have been going down quite a bit, right, across the market. So, the advantage is that it's probably less competitive, and if you can run a business today while others cannot, right, then you probably have an advantage going out of this. So, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
So we've got a very nice website, e-commerce.com, and you can log in or book a meeting with us, or go on LinkedIn. Jerome, family name is complicated. I'm sorry, De Guigné, for the and you
doesn't get more French than this, right? Jerome De Guigné.
No, you can't. So and you would find me on LinkedIn, and we're very active on LinkedIn. Post a lot of things, so do follow us.
So definitely my recommendation to get in touch with Jerome. If you have any questions around this, from my side, just a quick reminder. So if you go to Sellics.com, to our website, right on the homepage, you will see COVID-19 research, analysis, and strategies for Amazon brands and agencies. So if you click on this, we have built a dedicated page where essentially we summarize all the different findings on all the reports that we write, right, and the strategies. You can also sign up for our weekly newsletter about COVID and all the updates that we have. And then at this point, also a reminder that we do these sessions that we had today, right, the live interview. We do this on a weekly basis. So the next one is going to happen in a week from now, right? Same time, same day. We're going to have Karina McLeod from Vendor Society with us next week. So I'm very excited to have Karina here as well. And yeah, stay safe, and we hope that you're gonna get through this in the best possible ways, right? And yeah, tune in again next Thursday for our next session. See you guys very much. Thank you, Jerome. See you around. Yeah, bye bye.
Bye bye.